So we did a video earlier this week on some big, heavy, hard use knives. But if that's just a little overkill for you, what should you get? Well, we're going to talk about that and more on today's episode of Knife AQ, number 209 of the series where I answer all your questions, sharp or dull. Hey everyone, David C. Anderson from the KnifeCenter. Welcome to the show. Ignore this giggling panel next to me. We'll get to that in just a moment. If you're new to the show, of course, we take your questions from the comments section below. So if you've got a question and you think it could be worthy of inclusion in a future episode, you know what to do with it. Let's get started. Say hi to Thomas behind the camera as well. Okay. Bosun Briney asks our first question today. Says, question, what would be your top picks for knives that have the most inoffensive design? Or inversely, the knives that have a very distinct look of kindness or wholesomeness. When I saw this question, I thought of a particular individual. Some of you may already know this person, has made a lot of videos over the years. He's had me as a guest on his YouTube channel, Mr. Ben Peterson, everyone.
Can I take this down now, David?
There he is.
I've never started a video with a screen in front of me, but I like it.
We've never done that either. So this is a very high-tech solution to a modern problem here.
I love it.
What's up, Ben?
Good to be here, David.
Everyone say, what is up, guys, to Ben Peterson.
What is up, guys? I'm stoked to be here.
Hey, dude, thanks for coming down.
First time in this part of Virginia.
Yeah. So Ben's been kind of hanging around the shop today, getting the lay of the land, talking about Knafs, talking about future stuff. Yep. If you don't know, he is the owner-proprietor of the Knafs brand.
And I brought a hat.
I think, one of your series of Lander knives, I think fits this description really well. And I don't want it to seem derogatory, because there might be some people thinking that this question might be like a little offensive. But, I mean, your Lander one here, for example, I'll hand that to you.
Yeah, 100%. I think the entire idea here behind the Lander series is to design knives that don't look aggressive, that look like they could fit in an office. My whole career has been spent in offices. I'm not like a farm worker. In fact, if I may, I don't know if this is spoiling it, but look at a Lander 1 versus a Benchmade Adamas. You look at the size, you look at this looks like a tank. This, I don't know, it looks like a friendly butter knife.
It looks like a pocket knife.
Yeah.
There's a conversation we've had at one point. I said to you at one point, the thing I like about Ben's designs is you're good at designing just regular old pocket knives for regular old people.
Yeah.
In addition to the enthusiasts like them too. Like, these are things that enthusiasts can get excited about. But if there's anything kind of consistent through line, not just with your Lander series, but especially so with the Lander series, they're just regular pocket knives for regular folks, man.
They are.
That's harder to do than people might think.
I had another designer, he wasn't being critical, but he's like, Ben, all your stuff looks the same. Like, you need to be bigger lines, bolder things. And I'm like, I don't have any bigger lines or bolder things. And I think when you only have simple, you give simple. And I think for me, I love simplicity. I drive a Toyota Tacoma 2010, right? If there's not a more vanilla truck out there, that's it. Right?
Yeah, especially for like middle-aged white guys. We're in that middle-age area.
We
now,
are.
Probably too,
we are. Absolutely. But for me, I like how it talks about kindness and wholesomeness. Wholesomeness is a weird word. But,
yeah. Well, I like those words in the context of these too, because I think it gets into this weird zone where, like, these are inanimate objects, right?
Yep.
And yet, we as people tend to project certain values on certain inanimate objects. And because I see you as sort of a wholesome, regular person. I almost said boring vanilla, just to poke the barrel.
No,
but
call a spade a spade.
No.
David.
But you are a kind, generous, welcoming, wholesome feeling guy. And
try to be.
I don't know whether I project those values onto these knives as a result of that. I'm sure that has something to do with it.
So this goes into a theory I have, David, that people buy things that they identify with personally. So like people, if you're driving an F-150 or a Ram, like that projects something about you. I don't know why we're like that as human beings, but
we are.
But for me, like I want the things that I carry, that I wear, to be pretty simple. I just don't have a ton of, like, I wear a Timex watch, right? Like, because it does everything I need and nothing I don't. So I think I try to design around that as well, from the perspective of like, yeah, can you make it complicated with a space kitty? Absolutely. Wholesomeness and kindness, space kitties.
In a way, like, it is funny to me because, knife enthusiasts have obviously embraced the Lander series and your designs. And yet, stereotypically, this sort of graphic is almost like as anti-knife guy a thing as you could think of.
Yes.
And yet we still love it.
And
where did these come from? Like, what was I'm sure you've probably told this before, but like, what was the genesis of the Space Kitties?
So the Space Kitties was a bet with my wife.
Okay. Oh man.
Basically what happened is there was this company in Nashville, when we released the original Banter, they reached out and they were like, hey, we can put anything you want on the side of a knife. And I was like, anything, right? And so I just got into Photoshop, took some Creative Commons images of like a cat and space and just like smashed them together, sent it off to Nashville. Well, I got it back and I'm carrying it around, testing it. And people were like, I want that. And I'm like, no, you don't. And they're like, yeah, I do.
Do you ask yourself why?
Well, and here's why I think they want it, is it's goofy. And knives have this very serious, I'm going to pull this off the table too, this 80-15. This feels serious.
These knives take themselves very seriously.
They do.
Yeah. And there's a place for that.
There's an absolute place for that. And that's not really me. Like, I look at Andrew Demko, he's awesome. He's a tough guy, right? Like, he's big, he's tall. I'm like this scrawny dude that like snuck in the back door of the knife party. And that's fine. I think that there are different people who relate with different objects. I always think about the Space Kitties as kind of this soft landing into knives. So I didn't mean for it to be our mascot. I wasn't like, let's make a mascot. It just kind of happened that way. And it's been a really fun way to like get people into this hobby who normally might not want to be in it because it feels really aggressive and that's not their style. Right. So I think it's a soft entry is the way I would put it.
I appreciate that. And I like that there are, the industry now, like it's still, I think, heavily dominated by a lot of stuff that takes itself very seriously.
Yeah.
But with folks like you, Knafs and what you're doing, and some others out there too, there's room. Like, how many people are there in the world? I think you and I probably both agree that a knife would be useful to just about every single one of them.
Absolutely.
There is plenty of room for different levels of seriousness.
Yeah.
In this sort of thing.
I mean, let's look at what else is on the table here. You've got this. This is a Victorinox with cats on it.
So this was the other example of, most inoffensive and like the other thing that always comes to mind, even before Ben Peterson, is Victorinox, Swiss Army knives.
Oh yeah.
They are like universally accepted, even amongst folks where even a Lander 1 might go, what are you doing? Swiss Army knives.
Oh yeah, you cannot be offended by a Swiss Army knife. They're ubiquitous.
Someone will be.
Someone, yeah. I mean.
So like
someone could be.
Any Swiss Army knife is wholly wholesome in my mind, and these especially. We've got some of these KnifeCenter exclusives.
These are KnifeCenter exclusives.
These are, yeah.
That's cool. Who's doing the design work on this?
So Leela Ray is the artist. We've had her do several versions for us. Cool. These are 3, and I had to bring out the Mer Kitties here.
I love it.
In sort of counterpoint to your Space Kitties.
But see, this is the same thing, right? Like these don't feel aggressive,
right?
Like even if the red Victorinox is kind of lights you up on an offensive level, like a Mer Kitty, how could you be mad about that?
Yeah,
or like
a floral arrangement,
a potted floral. Yeah, like
I like the Yeti who's ice fishing and catches the fish in the ice block. There's something just like the futility of life in this to me, which is almost like a Far Side statement, Far Side cartoon or something.
But see, this brings new people into the hobby.
Agreed.
And I think I was talking to one of the other folks here at KnifeCenter, like. I see my metrics, and I'm going to assume your metrics are the same. 95 to 98% male.
Heavily, yeah.
Which is fine. That's great. But what about the other 50% of the population that might be interested in knives? How do you get people into it, right? And
the first thing is have an option for them.
An option. And I'm not saying like make it feminine. I don't think
not
any
that
of these
all women are attracted to the same thing either. Again, there's tons of people out there, but
the hard data, and I love data. I'm a data wonk when it comes to like website data, Instagram, YouTube. I look at our data and it's primarily male. Well, when we're designing only for one segment of the audience, males like tanks, they like trucks, and these are generalizations. turtles.
I like turtles. Yeah, that's good.
But what are some other themes that you can bring into it that are softer landings for more people?
Yeah.
That's part of my design philosophy is make it in a way that is more accessible to more people.
Good stuff.
Yeah.
Well, so we got the Lander one there. That's the OG. We're about $45 on this knife.
Yep.
D2, liner lock. Like it's got like all the enthusiast check boxes.
It does.
Wrapped up in this very nice,
Yep. Scales are swappable.
Inoffensive package.
So you can change the scales out. You can literally 3D print your own. There are a whole bunch of people making them that will customize them for you and that sort of thing. I love the fact that this is kind of the people's knife in a way.
That's another, like that gets into sort of the wholesome, inclusive nature of the way you like to do stuff too, is like, bring it on, do stuff with it.
Yeah, it's Creative
Put it out
Commons.
there and have fun.
Creative Commons open source, and I look at that and I'm like, oh, this is crazy. But the things that come back from the community are really fascinating. We've had people do stuff in aluminum. There's a guy out there that like 3D prints them and then like wraps elephant skin around them, or like different types of skins, and it's like remarkable work. And I'm like,
Interesting.
do I have interest in doing that myself? No, absolutely not. I got other things.
You get to go there and say, how cool is it that exists?
Yeah, and it's attached. I almost like to think of it as like a Jeep with like a really cool rooftop tent on it. I'm making Jeeps. Other people are making the rooftop tents, but I'm like, yes, that rooftop tent is amazing.
Right.
And I get to be part of it, but I don't necessarily have to make a rooftop tent that I'm not equipped to do. So that's the clip point. People love that one, man.
So that's the Lander 3, which is the Lander 1 size, but with the crossbar lock, of course.
Crossbar lock, and then we kind of got crazy on this one, kind of going for like a heritage style on that one.
Yeah.
It's paper micarta with a clip point.
It's kind of got the same, like if the Lander was a buck 112 or
100%.
if it's a big one.
And some people accuse me of like thievery when I look at what's in the industry and say, how do you apply that? I don't think it's thievery, it's inspiration, right? Like this feels like 1975 to me. And what knives were in that era? Well, Buck was in that era, right?
Yeah.
That was they're still in a heyday, but that was like the heyday of the Buck 110.
For sure.
Was that moment. So how do you take that heyday and say, apply it to something that we're doing? So that's kind of where the clip point idea came from, but I love the handles. They're a little smooth.
Is always fun.
They're a little smooth. But personally, I've grown to really, really enjoy that. So
Good stuff.
yeah, man.
We got the 4, which is the EDC fixed blade size.
Yep.
A couple different blade shapes here.
Yep, you got a drop point and then sheep's foot here. This one's S35 too. So
Oh yeah.
the other one, the drop point is 14C28N with the moon dust micarta. That moon dust micarta, people really enjoy
That's
that.
a good color
combination.
combo. Yeah, I like that. You're doing good stuff, I think, too, with slightly less obvious color combinations. Because again, like how many knives out there look this color scheme right here, you know?
Which that color scheme sells. I look at
it's cool to see more than just
yeah.
that, in my
It
mind.
makes me nervous though, David. I'll tell you what. when you put in a purchase order to buy like something that's a little bit
Do
off,
you go like, that's what sells, let's not do that?
Yeah. But like think about that from a business owner's perspective. Like I know that this is going to sell in this color combination. But what if we did it in Space Kitties? You know? Or what if it like it's
I would love to see an 8015 with some Space Kitties.
Ender Demko, can we make that happen?
That'd be pretty cool.
Could that be so? But even if he were to do that, he has to put his money on that.
Right.
And
Right.
take that risk. And that every time we do something a little out of the box, I'm like, I hope it sells.
Well, so far so good, it seems.
Nothing's broken yet.
That's good.
Just my soul. Just my will.
Well, let's talk about the newest releases real quick, because these are like probably like the most timely here, of course.
Yeah.
You just wrapped up your Kickstarter for this knife right here.
Yep. And this will go to dealers probably about September. This is the Lander 5. So I work.
Tell me about like why this? What is this?
Why this? So it's going to be about a $25 to $30 knife when it hits the market. I wanted a knife. I work with the Boy Scouts, and they always come in and they're like, Ben, I got 25 bucks burning a hole in my pocket. What can I buy? And I'm like, nothing.
Not much in the knife world.
Nothing that we make. I mean, you could buy a Victorinox for that much, but I don't sell Victorinox. And so
even that just barely now, too.
Yeah. So I was like, well, what could we make for somebody getting into knives? Not necessarily selling knives to children, let's be clear, but just this idea of like, what is a good starter knife? What makes it, what helps somebody get into it? Like once you're done with Victorinox, you're like, okay, I'm ready to not have a slip joint.
I need like a real knife,
Right.
for lack of a better term.
Where do you go? And so I wanted this Lander 5 to be that entry point into pocket knives for somebody who's just getting into it. So keeping the price low is important. It's 8CR14 MOV steel, so it's not a great steel. Like if you're a knife guy or a knife person, like I've heard people complain about the steel, but I'm like,
It's also a $25 to $30 knife.
exactly.
Yeah.
And so I think that we want that to be a, I don't know, S35 VN steel.
Well, here's what you do then. Like a few years down the line, all these scouts that are buying these now, you do the Eagle Scout version later, and that's the fancier
and you move
version
them up
maybe.
to
There
the
you go.
S35.
That's an option.
So this one's been, I'm excited about it. I've had this idea for a while of just making a more affordable knife. And this is kind of the first foray into that. The second foray, right on the heels of it, Lander 6.
Also coming soon at KnifeCenter.
Yep. This one is just a tiny little keychain knife with a back lock. Injection molded handle, comes in 4 different colors. And again, same thing. I wanted a knife that would just be pocketable, easy to own, easy to carry.
Keychainable even.
Keychainable, yep. And this one will come in, I think on your side it'll be about $15. So I think I'm not a brand that wants to have everything be like $300. You know, like me personally, I don't spend $300 on knives. I know that's heresy for some, but for me that's a lot of money. And so I've always wanted to kind of cater to like all the sides of it. Like you look at the Lander 2, you're looking at $130 to $150 depending on the variation. But what about somebody who's just getting into it? Because nobody's going to go out and just drop $150 on a knife that hasn't bought a 15, 25.
Right.
We almost have to
cases,
poison them by degrees a little bit.
I prefer the term indoctrinate.
Indoctrinate. That is also a
These
propagandistic word.
I chose it very intentionally.
But if you look at the line, it almost works a little bit backward, right? Like cheapest to more expensive and then back to cheap again. But it's fun to be able to have a white slate. I had a friend that used to work at Gerber. He sent me a message, very kind of him. He said, it's so cool to see your line coming from the very beginning.
Yeah.
Because he was working at Gerber with like 70, 80 years of history.
Right. This entrenched catalog,
Yeah.
and this thing you have to respect, but you get the clean slate.
It's really fun, and it's terrifying. You and I were talking about some new models coming out. And you're like, these don't look like those models. And I'm like, no, David, but it's probably time. We're 7 years into it. It shouldn't all just look like my stuff. So I think it's a good moment.
Yeah, some cool stuff. Keep an eye out.
Yeah.
Well, that's all I have, I think.
That's great. I love it.
This was an entirely wholesome and inoffensive segment to start today's FAQ. You want to stick around for a few more questions?
Of course, absolutely.
All right, let's do that. Which is good, because I picked them with you in mind as well. First one, we're going to come now to our measured once, cut twice segment, where we take a second slice at a previous question. This was in response to our video earlier this week, where we were comparing some iconic hard use folders and some budget alternatives to each. And a few had some good comments. Giba1963, hi DCA, thanks for the video and the effort you put into this. In my humble opinion, the 8015 Lite would be the best alternative to the Adamas. Yes, I 100% agree. So here's the story, Ben.
Yeah.
We did this video. I had the knife, and I would talk about a budget alternative to that particular knife.
Okay.
Down the line. And I got to the Adamas, and I was like, I was kind of having a hard time finding the most appropriate budget alternative. And I picked up, one of the other competitors, like, this is kind of it, but in the end I went with the Kershaw Broadside, which is a cool knife. The next day when we were picking up the knives and I'm looking at it, this knife was also on the table because there's a more expensive version of this knife. So it's like the Lite is the budget alternative to the expensive one. But then I'm holding them next to each other side by side. It's like, daggone it.
They're pretty dang close.
Dude, the vibes are so similar. The locks are obviously different, but you've got finger safe closing action with each. They have similar attitude. Profiles are similar, and this is like $90.
Yeah.
Compared to the almost 300 or so.
I was gonna ask, what does an Adamas run?
Well, they run the range, so you've got the mini, you've got the base large. Let me look it up. I should have pulled this up before we started.
You're all good.
Just as prepared when we had guests.
There's automatic versions, of course. So the standard full size comes in about $325.
Yeah, man.
And this is 90 right here, and with arguably a possibly stronger lock.
Yeah.
Compared to the crossbar lock there.
And I think that when you get into branding, like Benchmade is such an institution. Demco, great designer, great brand, not the same sort of institution. And I think in some ways when you're buying a Benchmade, you're paying for a name.
Well, I mean,
right?
this is cold steel at this point. This is not a Demco product.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
But even I would argue the same argument that Benchmade, Cold Steel also an institution, but I would say that Benchmade is just like this monolithic, huge bear, right? Cold Steel also big, but just not as
doesn't feel quite the same.
Right, and maybe I'm going off of like SHOT Show booths. Like when you go to SHOT Show, the Benchmade booth is just like people.
Well,
like
now Cold Steel wasn't even at SHOT Show for many years.
Right.
They actually got blacklisted for a couple of years. But now that they're part of GSM, who's now part of whatever they're a part of, they get a lot bigger booth space now, I guess. But
just it's an interesting thing. But I think those are a pretty good match.
I think it's a pretty good match. But the reason I picked this this question here is it gets to a thing that I'm having to deal with all the time, which in the process of making videos for the channel here, I mean, we do 3 videos a week on most weeks anyway. And, it's a job and there's deadlines involved sometimes. And there will be times, this was one of them, where as soon as we got done doing it, I wished I'd done something a little bit differently. And that's just, there's a deadline. You gotta put your best foot forward. And
how hard is it to
move on to the next
change
thing.
one thing in a video, David?
It depends on what it is.
It depends on the change. It depends on the change.
But
this one, if I had done this, I would have then taken the full size 80-15 off the table, because I would have had an opportunity to talk about it here, and I would have mentioned it, and I would have taken another pairing off the table too. Like as I was doing, I was like, that would mean I would take these 2 off, and it would streamline it a little bit better, and that would have been a better video by a couple degrees.
Yeah.
Too late,
It's I love the
Missed
quote.
out on this little thing.
Yeah, then you get the bonus bite here.
I love the quote, art is never finished, it just escapes. And I feel that way about
Escapes
knife.
is a good word there.
I like
it, 'cause it gets away from you.
Whether it's a video or a knife design, at some point you have to say, go little butterfly, fly into the world.
Yeah.
And is it perfect? No, but is it done? Yeah. It's the idea that done is better than perfect sometimes.
Yeah.
And
I'm sure you've encountered that not just in the videos, but in running the business too, I'm sure, and launching products.
yeah, and I hate to say it because we all want to have like this Chris Reeve knives perfection to our products, but like a lot of it is just like, man, we're doing the very best we can with the time we have and the brand we have.
Counterpoint to that too is, were the first ever Sebenzas that perfect?
No, I saw one from the 80s the other day.
They're good, but
No.
they're not as perfect as they are now.
Dude, I saw one from the 80s and I was like, ew. That was my response.
I didn't quite have the response, but
Well,
no,
it was-
But it was, what they're achieving now does eclipse those first products. So.
Yeah, it does, and it maybe not. Yeah, but like, what is that? Like, it just if you were to come out with that in 2025, people would laugh at you. What you have to remember is they were developing it, right? That was happening in that moment.
Yeah.
I think that the bar is so much higher to come out with anything now,
100%.
which is great. I think it's
Pushes us all to be better, and
It does.
the people buying the stuff win.
but
honestly.
it's challenging in its own right.
Indeed. All right, shall we get to the lightning round for today? First question from Chavy07. Hey, DCA and Thomas, where do you rate AUS 10 as a steel? I know you've done steel videos in the past, but don't recall it being mentioned. I can't find any numbers from Dr. Laren and Knife Steel Nerds. I would kind of put AUS 10 near, when it comes to like knife steels anyway, I kind of put them into 2 separate buckets. You've got the particle metal stuff, the high performance stuff, and the non-particle metallurgy stuff. And there's a range amongst each, of course. But AUS 10 alongside stuff like 154 CM, VG10, stuff like that, I put at kind of like the top of the non-particle bucket, and like the next tier up, you're getting into like the particle steels anyway. It's good, solid stuff. Anything to add?
Well, yeah, steel's funny because I think, yes, there are higher performance steels. We sure talk about steel a lot when it comes to knives. I wish we were talking about making things with our knives more, right? Like, what did you make with it? What did you build?
What did you do with
right?
it? What did it actually do for you?
What did it actually do for you? And maybe that's a silly way to look at it, but like, how
It's a
did
more
you
pragmatic way to
how
look
did you use your knives?
Right.
Show me the spoon you carved with your knife, or the bowl you did, or the fence you built.
And show me how the AUS 10 didn't do as good a job as...
And that's what I wonder.
yeah.
And that's not to downplay the role of steel. I just think, man, if we spent as much time like beating on them as we do
Thinking
reading
about them
thinking
and,
about them. I would be curious to see kind of
Yeah.
more field testing.
Well, it's good stuff. Like, and all of them have their place too. I mean, this is
do.
this is a big chunk of steel in the grand scheme of things when we're talking about folding knives. This is a $90 knife, so you're getting. Yeah, there are $90 knives that you can get with MagnaCut nowadays, but they're not as big and beefy as that.
Yeah.
So, whatever you want, whatever you need, there's something out there for you, it seems these days. Austin Judway says, "Hi DCA, do you name your knives?" So I don't like give them like pet names or anything.
That's what I was wondering. Like you name your Pocket Tango.
Right. So, two knife designers here behind the table. It has often been said, not just by us and by far more lucid and intelligent people than us, that the hardest part about putting a knife on the market is naming it.
Yeah.
So I want to ask you that, like,
Yeah.
what goes into? So I have the way I like to name knives. You have the way you like to name knives, and this is getting less of a lightning round question, but how you do that?
How you do that? Yeah, so my whole thing is like, what's the story behind it, right? So Lander, we brought in this space theme and like this idea that like space belongs to everyone. So there's a lot of like Creative Commons assets from NASA. Some of the coolest imagery in the world of the universe is open source. So I was like, well, that makes a lot of sense to build a story around it. So I always try to name them around a story.
I've never heard you say that before. Like, I've never looked into why it was called the Lander, but that's cool.
But the inspiration from it came from Lander, Wyoming. But Lander, Wyoming is a pretty place, but that's not a story.
Sounds like a desolate place.
Yeah, it's beautiful, but it's not like nobody knows where Lander, Wyoming is.
right.
But everyone can look at the moon and be like, yeah, we've walked up there.
We
that's
all know
cool.
the moon.
So I try to like connect with something that people can think about and connect a story to it. Like the Civivi Sendi is one of my favorite stories. It was supposed to be called the Cedar.
Right.
And then that name was trademarked or whatever. We had to change it.
And that gets into a lot of like the hard part of it is the name you think is like the perfect name for this and wraps up the story. You can't use it.
You can't use it. But I think nobody was naming their knife Sendi because it's a stupid name, right? I'll be the first to admit it. But when you wrap a story around that name, like Cedar didn't work,
Right.
so we called it, we're just gonna send it,
Right.
call it
There
Sendi,
it is.
right? And now it becomes a memorable
part of
thing.
the story.
Yes,
Yeah, for sure,
exactly.
for sure.
I'm curious, there's a second part of this question. Do you name your knives like, I don't know, I'm thinking about like the swords in Lord of the Rings and stuff. Like,
I've never
do you have
given
anything in your collection that has like a pet name?
There is, so at the beginning of the COVID era,
That's when I started naming my knives.
my social distancing tool around the office here was a sword that we named Stabatha.
Stabatha.
Don't know where that actually came from, but that's the only one really I've given kind of a pet name to.
I don't have any pet names for my knives.
Yeah.
I think I feel okay about that. It's
I'm
hard,
fine with that, yeah.
It's hard enough to give them like an original name, like yeah.
Like I have for on that side of things, I have a running document where every once in a while I'll think of a word and I'll put it in that document. I was like, that could be an interesting. I don't necessarily know what the name is for yet.
Yeah.
But I was like, put a pin in that,
I have a similar document.
Yeah.
But I think that you have to develop a story around it. We're working on one right now that it's got a name that I love. We're trademarking it, and we're building the story around it versus like, I'd call it more of like a found story that we're going to develop a story around.
Sure.
Versus like one from my life or whatever, right? How do you? And I think there's two sides to that. You can either have one from your life that's meaningful, like a mountain range or your grandmother, or you just come up with a word and then you make a story.
Right.
So
Well, I wish some of mine had better stories, quite honestly.
where did the Pocket Tango name come
Pocket
from?
Tango, this is when I first started like designing the first knives that I intended to like put out there. Like the Canteen knife was one of the first, and that's a very functional name.
Yeah.
It's the Canteen being like the camp kitchen, and that was a camp kitchen crossover knife. The Tango, not the Pocket Tango.
I was gonna say, is it the Tango or the Pocket Tango?
So this is the Pocket Tango.
Okay.
The general shape and the name, I was working on something that was roughly the size of an SE3.
Okay.
Because I had, at that point, I was getting into sort of carrying that as an EDC fixed blade, which obviously bigger than a pocket EDC fixed blade. And I started like, maybe I could do this or this or this with it. And I decided at that point to call it the Tango. This knife was never actually released, but it's been this like thing I've been reiterating and working on over the years. And the EDC, the larger EDC fixed blade, it was twofold. The tango aspect being like the dance and the music. Like this is your everyday dance partner. It moves with you. It's sensual. We'll get a little bit.
I feel like, we need to bring some like tango music up as you're
It's a
talking
little
about
bit. But also like it was something like the SE3 has sort of like self-defense applications potentially too, and tactical. So like the word tango has applications in like military context as well. So it's like, this is great. It's the synthesis of these two things. But then the pocket part, when we started working on that project with MKM, I took the original, the Tango, which we're not going to show prototypes of that, some of my early rough ground handmade prototypes. It had a similar shape to this blade shape, not the Nesmuck shape, which I think is the better seller of the Pocket Tango, but it was similar to like this shape. So when I brought it over to this pocket size, it was like Pocket Tango, that has a nice ring. So that was it. So again, it's kind of like, I look for rather than the name telling the story in a way, or the name representing the story, my metaphor is going to get a little mixed up here, but I'm trying to put the title that's on the cover of the book. Like when you use that knife, what is that knife about? It's the Pocket Tango.
And then write your own story.
And then you can it could be whatever. It's a choose your own adventure, I guess. We'll go with that. But that's the or maybe not the title, but like the headline of the knife. If they were writing a newspaper headline, the name's kind of encapsulating that. Same thing with the Maximal as well. I designed this. I wanted something that I could, you're talking about like entry-level knives and starter knives and such. This is kind of, it's a separate.
So nice.
Oh, dude, they came out so good. The action, the action on their crossbar lock is
please,
so
we're
good.
now going to do an ad. Guys, this is a nice knife.
But you notice
you can
how
buy
good
it at
that action is.
KnifeCenter.com.
Like immediately that action
You do.
is
It's
so
great
good.
action.
It's so good. That's part of why I went with CJRB for them. But so this is one, like, there is actually kind of a story to this now that I'm thinking about it, is from my early blog days, which is where you and I first met when I was still a writer back in the day. I'd always wanted like my universal knife recommendation, and I developed, like, I had a list of like, if it's something I want to be able to recommend to anyone, no questions asked, it has to be at least XYZ. And I've kind of like expanded that list over the years, and nothing ever quite hit it. So the Maximal, even though people are giving me a hard time, like, it's kind of small to be called the Maximal, right? But it's designed for the maximal cross section of the population to be able to just say, here, take this, you'll be fine.
That's cool.
I
like that. Yeah. So let me ask you this. When you do a Maximal that's larger or smaller, what do you do next? Like,
I'm not at liberty to say.
Well, okay, but
because we may or may not be already working on something.
On a naming level, though, do you call it a Maximal XL or like an XS, like small, like?
I'm not ready to reveal.
Okay.
Because I actually have some things in mind for that already. I'm not sure what CJRB is going to pick up for the next line extension, but it's going to happen.
I like it.
This has been selling exceptionally well. And they are quite pleased, and they want to do more.
That's awesome.
Which excites me.
That's awesome.
So yeah, there's some things I'm working on, but like, it's kind of funny, and I don't want to spoil it yet.
No, and the reason I asked is because I decided we're going to do liner 1, 2, 3, 4. People are like, well, the 3 is smaller than the 2. And
so in terms of like a numbering nomenclature, I like what Spyderco does, quite honestly. We've got the Delica 4. It's not a different size Delica, it's the 4th generation of the Delica. So I like having that as an option. Like if we ever do like a 2nd generation Maximal, it could be the Maximal 2. So that's kind of where I fall on the way I want to name my things. But
I like it.
Which I'm not saying you're doing it wrong.
No, it's funny because I think you swan dive into something. Like look at the Kershaw launch series. How many launches are there?
Oh yeah.
20?
I wish those had better names now, because there are so many of them.
Yeah, so one thing we've talked about at Knafs is like capping it at lander 7. We're not going to go past 7. That's not hard and fast yet.
But that's what you're looking at.
But I'm just thinking, like, beyond 7, can anybody remember? Like, I know that I used to know, like, up to launch 13. I can't tell you anything. I know what a launch 4 is now. And everything else, I'd have to look it up.
Yeah, like, I know my favorite shapes, but except for the launch 1, because that's my favorite one that I've had for a long time, even the ones that are my favorites, I have to look up and try to figure out which one it was.
Naming is hard, man. And there's not a perfect way to do it.
Was that a good lightning round length answer? It's fun. It's a good combo, I think, though. One more lightning round question.
Hey, I'm here for it, man. You're driving.
Leonardo asks, he's kind of a his icon is a rat with sunglasses.
Is it a rat or a possum? I'm further away.
It's a rat, some sort of rodentia with sunglasses. Fits right alongside the kitties here on the table. Nice to see you again, DCA, through his sunglasses. Do you usually see and use knives in your dreams or nightmares? You probably do this too. I, like, before, in the couple weeks leading up to like a blade show or a shot show, they definitely enter my dreams. And it's less about the knives, even though like they're gonna be part of the dreams, honestly, but like those are high intensity events. There's a lot of planning, the stakes are high, and yeah, the stuff you're thinking about and stressed about during the day is bound to come in.
Yeah, I think that like any job working in this industry, there's stress and there's deadlines. I'm with you. Stress streaming about product launches, or if there's some sort of struggle at work, it's like you're grinding your teeth, you know? But I wonder if his question is like, are you dreaming up knife designs in your sleep?
I think I've dreamed about a knife design before. Not like that, but not the actual design, but like the events around it, like that a thing was happening. Like I didn't even remember that until we're talking about it now. It's starting to like tickle the back of my brain.
As I'm falling asleep, I usually have really good ideas.
Yeah.
And then I don't wake up and write them down. They poof off into the world.
Gone. Anyway. Well, now we come to our final question of the day, which is, of course, our most seriousest question of the day. We take these final questions very seriously.
I just saw it.
This is not a joke. This is very serious.
It's most serious.
Today's question, and I'm sure, you know, given you and I have done similar things in our career, that you may or may not have gotten this question before. This oddly comes up rather frequently, giving truth to this frequently asked question title of the video. Hammer 6 Golf says, "Are you wearing pants?" My question. I'm going to answer your question with a question. Who's asking?
It's pretty funny. Do you wear pants behind the table? He asked it twice.
I put him in here twice because there was a week where he like kept asking this variation of the same question. So it was like he's a little extra curious.
Really wants to know.
I think you leave it a mystery, David.
What does it matter, right? That's all I'm saying. Well, that's all the time we have for today, folks.
You left it a mystery.
Ben, thanks for coming out, man.
Thanks for having me.
Blast.
Everyone, delight.
Give Knafs stuff a look over at the KnifeCenter. Of course, we're gonna have links in the description, which will take you over there. I forgot to plug it at the beginning of the video. Or no, I did actually. A few months back, Ben had me as a guest on his Knafs video, or Knafs YouTube channel. I thought that was a really fun interview.
Somebody said in the comments on that one, this is my favorite crossover I've ever seen. So if you like weird crossovers with dudes that like knives, that one was fun.
Check it out. I had a lot of fun doing it, and I think it came out pretty good too.
Yep.
So.
Thank you, David.
Yeah, appreciate it, man. Anyway, if you got any alternate questions or alternate answers to the questions, leave them in the comments below. Leave your questions also in the comments below, because that is the lifeblood, of course, of this series, and to get your hands on any of this stuff. Links in the description. The Lander 5, obviously, not quite here yet, but should be
Everything
here in
else should be here.
Months.
Here or about to be here.
Yeah, I think this one is about to be here, so just keep an eye out. You'll be able to check it all out down below. That's all we got, folks. Don't forget also about our long-running Knife Rewards program, so you can earn some free money to spend on your future knives. I'm David, that's Thomas, that's Ben. We're signing off. See you next time.
So that's what's up, guys.
I'll be a good boy.
Shut up.